How many of you here have to deal with other designers? Sometimes designers can be crazy. You know, I look back at a lot of decisions I made in my career, and some of them were really good. And some of them weren't. And some of them are off-the-cuff decisions that didn't necessarily have the backup to give the game consistency, to deliver on our goals. But that was simply the best decision I had the ability to make at the time with the information I had. The larger your framework for design, the more easily you can make consistent decisions. And it is my belief that consistency makes for better games. There's no problem with bucking consistency where you've made an active choice to break out of the structure that you've set up for your game. But nonetheless, I think in general, a consistent game is more easily understood by the user, and a consistent game offers an overall better experience. So, by providing the structure of values and then down to philosophies, you offer everybody else the option and the opportunity to make a great majority of the design decisions in much the way that you would yourself, and with full knowledge of how that fits into the structure of the game. A big part of the lead designer's responsibility is to be able to look at the entire game and understand how everything fits into place. Not everybody else has that luxury. Not everybody else has the time to, stop doing what they're doing, play the game regularly, to have an understanding of what everybody else is working on and how all those things fit into place. That shouldn't, however, stop them from being able to make great decisions. And that's really what we're talking about here, letting other people make great decisions. So, it's a good lead into the next section. The second thing I want to talk about is the leadership end of this diagram. And we've established that we're building spaces in which experiences happen. And we're doing this through establishing high-level values at the highest level. And we're doing this by at the highest level establishing what the player experience is that we want to deliver. What things we want players to come away with having grasped from our game. The next level down, we talk about the values, the drivers that enable us to deliver this experience. Then we've got a collection of rules that enable us to understand how low-level system decisions will be made. And it's really good to keep coming back to these too. This is something we do on a regular basis. On a regular basis, we'll look at a feature, we'll say this is working out, it's pretty fun. It's going to be, it's going to be another 12 weeks of work to really bring this up to something we can ship as a cohesive part of our game. Is it working for us? And for us, two of our big design goals in the project that I'm working on at the moment, which I can't talk too much about, but we're developing an original IP project in Pandemic Brisbane at the moment. And two of the big values are, is it obvious? And is it forgiving? The third is it over the top? It's amazing how many things that you can come back to and go, is it forgiving? Oh yeah, it's a kind of decent mechanic, there's a lot of room for players to screw up and then get back on track. Is it obvious? Well, when you jump in the car, it then becomes a spaceship. That's probably not as obvious. We could just make a spaceship. And is it over the top? And that carries through our art style, it carries through our design decisions, it carries through every element of what we do. So, that's how we do things in order to make a great game happen, or at least a cohesive game. The next step is how we get a team to make that game. And here's where I have a slightly different approach to most of the other lead designers I've worked with in my history. My contention is that the best way to achieve the goals we want as a lead designer is to make work a game. And when I say this, I'm saying something dramatically different to let's all go and have fun and play around. We are game designers. We know how to make great systems that reward players and encourage them to continue on. we have an enormous wealth of knowledge about the structure of games and the way that games work. I think it's really simple to start applying those rules we've learned to the work environment we build. And so far, I've had a lot of success with this line of thinking. The window for me was looking at the very much the classic fundamental Nintendo or Valve method of introducing new mechanics to a game. You can look at something like we'll show you somebody using this mechanic, then we'll let you use this mechanic in a restricted room where the only way to get out of this room is to demonstrate that you understand the mechanic. Then whoops, it's over here. Then we'll let you take this mechanic out into the world and use it to solve puzzles. And then finally we expect mastery. You'll be using this mechanic while doing other things, dodging people shooting at you, whatever. So you build through a really consistent set in order to introduce players to mechanics. We've been doing this for years and years and years. We have an understanding of how that all fits together. We have an understanding of how to ramp the process. We have an understanding of how to build that kind of environment where that happens. So the question becomes, how do you apply this in the workplace? And it's really simple. When you're taking, a good example of this is, so we've got a new level designer who's started recently, and I want to take them through the process of making a level. There's a lot of ways I can do this. I can slap them down in front of a machine, say, there's a huge pile of documentation, here's kind of the sketch we've done of the map, here's where it fits in the story, in a week I expect you to have a doc, I'll read that, edit it. A week after that I want you to have a white box version, and spend a week setting up some triggers. And a week after that I might look at it again and we'll see how it all goes. And again, that's a very classic way of going about these things. I think it's much easier to start by letting them watch somebody do it with proficiency. So we have one of our more accomplished level designers go through the process, go through how they start. We all sit down in a room together and we go through each step of their thinking. And we get them to think out loud. How do you start? Well, I normally start by sketching it out on paper. Okay, sketch it out on the whiteboard. Then I'm trying to think of, well, the player's going to come in, they're going to look around, I want to provide them some sort of surprise early on. Okay, well, so sketch that in. And then I want to show them somebody using it. Okay. And then I want to force them to use the new tool we've got in order to get to the next stage. By getting to see somebody go through this thinking, they're one step ahead. Next step ahead, really simple. They get to do it in a controlled circumstance. They get to do it in an easy, friendly environment with all the other people that we've talked about who were there in the first one, but this time they get to lead the process. So now they're in a comfortable environment. They know what the stages are. They've hopefully taken notes through the first part of the process. They've seen how it works. And they can say, okay, well, I'm thinking that this is going to be level 3, and that's where we've got the wave motion cannon. The wave motion cannon is really cool, and that lets you blow the crap out of things. And we're also introducing, the super pants. So I thought we'd start out with, a bit that lets us use the wave motion cannon to open up a space, solve some puzzles with that will get you to the super pants and then on. And that's a great place for the experienced level designer, any leads, any creative directors, to steer any parts of those processes that are having trouble. Exactly as it would be in a game. Exactly as you would as a game designer steer the players who are having trouble in the right direction. But by the same token, remain relatively hands-off while they're doing the right things, while they're moving and progressing towards their goal. So from that perspective, you then move on to, now you've seen them do it. You've actually seen them do the task. And this is something, you can do all the interviews you like, you can do all the design tests you like, but you can't just take a new employee and say, here's 3 weeks work, I'll see you in 3 weeks. Not unless you have the confidence that they know what steps to take that comes from having watched them do it. Once you've watched them do it,